Good afternoon. On behalf of all of us at the National Glass Association, thank you for making time in your day to join us for this month's installment of Thirsty Thursday. Before we dive into today's topic, a few NGA updates for you. On the next slide, as you may have seen, the NGA Glass Conference, as planned to occur in Chicago this July, has been canceled in favor of alternate formats due to lingering restrictions and uncertainty related to travel. We will retain a brief meeting during the original dates on Tuesday, July 20th to allow time for those important committee updates. Plus, we'll use a portion of our time to brainstorm and discuss what are those hot topics that have arisen in the last 6 to 12 months that NGA should be aware of and consider its focus. This discussion will tee up a portion of part 2 of the conference that will occur September 15th in conjunction with Glass Build America in person in Atlanta. It will be an opportunity to be among peers from across the supply chain and time for collaborative discussions on topics including security, bird-friendly glazing, global warming potential, anisotropy, shower enclosures, and more. The July event is free to attend, and registration for both NGA Glass Conference events is required. You can use the link as shown on your screen at Events, NGA Glass Conference July 2021 to find out more information. NGA recognizes that June is the unofficial beginning of hurricane season, which runs through November. In the past 3 years, the number of named storms has risen from 15 to 30, and above normal activity is predicted again this year. Glass provides varying levels of safety from windborne debris and impact based on the requirements of the geographic region, while offering the biophilic benefits of daylight and view to the occupant. In other areas of the country, tornadoes typically occur during this season, so NGA has compiled the glass technical papers and manuals listed on your screen that are available for download in the NGA store. It's back to business. Glass Build America is happening September 13th to 15th in Atlanta, Georgia, leading our industry back to networking, advancement, connection, technologies, and more. Presented by NGA with association sponsor FGIA, Glass Build America connects the glass and fenestration industry to share common challenges and solutions. While at Glass Build America, you can elevate your experience with educational events taking place in the same space, the NGA Glass Conference and the Glazing Executives Forum. Maximize your time, money, and takeaways by considering these add-ons. Attendee registration is open, and there is still time to secure or grow your booth space too. Visit glassbuild.com for more information. I'm now pleased to introduce our speaker, Urmila Sowell. Urmila is a technical and advocacy director for NGA. She has over 20 years experience in the glass and glazing and fenestration industries. Her current position includes overseeing all technical and advocacy activities for NGA. Urmila holds leadership roles at several standards organizations, including ASTM International, the ISO Board, and ASHRAE. She earned both her Bachelor and Master of Science degrees in Civil Engineering from Texas Tech University and is a licensed professional engineer. Urmila, welcome.
Thank you, Sarah, and thank you all for joining me today for this presentation. Today, we're going to do a little bit of a deep dive in what the Buy Clean California Act is and what it means for the glass industry. A brief outline of what I'll be covering today is product category rules, life cycle assessment, environmental product declarations, and how those are defined, glass PCRs and EPDs that are available, the actual Buy Clean California Act itself, what the language states, the differences of flat glass and processed glass, and then, of course, some reference materials. So in order to help you understand the questions NGA has been receiving regarding the Buy Clean California Act, you need to have a little bit of a background on the alphabet soup of PCRs, LCAs, and EPDs. So what are the product category rules? These are the guidelines. Per the ISO 14025 standard, it's defined as the set of specific rules, requirements, and guidelines for developing Type 3 environmental product declarations for one or more product categories. And life cycle assessment, or sometimes called life cycle analysis, is the analysis part, the compilation and evaluation of the inputs, the outputs, and the potential environmental impacts of the product system throughout its life cycle. And then the actual environmental product declaration itself. So this is the communications port. This is the report that you get from going through your life cycle assessment. So the definition is providing quantified environmental data using on predetermined parameters and, where relevant, additional environmental information. So now that we have an understanding of what these three are, some of the actual product category rules. So this is a method for developing the actual EPDs. It establishes a system boundary, whether it be a cradle to gate or a cradle to grave. And the PCR are typically valid for 5 years. Of course, it can be extended. So now getting into the actual glass PCRs and EPDs that we have within the industry. So several years ago, the Flat Glass Manufacturing Division of the Glass Association of North America produced the PCR for flat glass. It has then been updated. It was updated again last year, in which NSF Sustainability republished this, so with some minor tweaks, of which the system boundary is cradle to gate, with a declared unit of 1 ton. And the product that's listed is flat, float, or rolled glass. So this is for flat glass itself. And it's valid until September of 2025. And then we have a PCR for processed glass. This here was the processed glass PCR includes coated glass, heat-treated glass, insulating, laminating, and pretty much all of the building envelope and installed interior types of glass. About 5 years ago, members of the then Glass Association of North America and now National Glass Association, and then the Insulating Glass Manufacturers Alliance, now FGIA, jointly produced the processed glass product category rules. Although it's due to expire in August of this year, both NGA and FGIA are working to extend the deadline. There's a current survey out for those members who have used this PCR to reach out to NGA staff, so that way we're aware that if you're using it and if it's not being used, why isn't it? So that way we can update it properly for the industry. And then there's an EPD for industry-wide flat glass. In December of 2019, the National Glass Association Forming Committee worked together to produce this industry-wide environmental product declaration for flat glass. There are several flat glass manufacturers who have their own EPDs in addition to this industry-wide EPD as well. And all of these slides have links on them, so when you do get these, you're able to go straight to these documents. So now on to the actual California AB262, the Buy Clean California Act. So what is this exactly, and why is it that we're talking about this here today? So in October of 2017, California enacted the Buy Clean California Act in order to address carbon emissions. So that pretty much means that the California state agencies must consider global warming potential of 4 eligible materials. Inside of the actual, the language itself has, it was named carbon steel rebar, structural steel, mineral wool board insulation, and flat glass. Those are the only 4 materials that was called out in this act. So again, how do you comply with this? So AB 262 asks anyone bidding on public works projects in California to submit an EPD, environmental product declaration, for the 4 specified building product materials, including flat glass. So what are considered public works projects? In AB 262, public works projects include the Department of Transportation, your water resources, Parks and Rec, corrections facilities, military, the general services department, as well as universities, and any of the projects in which it's state funded. Some of the legislation dates to be aware of. Back in January 1st of 2019, EPDs will be requested by the state for these state-funded projects for all of these 4 materials. And on January 1st of 2020, that's when these EPDs were required by the state. They're now required. And then January 1st of this year, the Department of General Services had to establish an acceptable global warming potential for each of the eligible material. And then July 1st, and this is why we're having this presentation today, July 1st is coming up in a couple of weeks, EPDs will now be required and used to gauge GWP compliance of eligible materials. As I had mentioned previously, that the NGA Forming Committee had published an industry-wide flat glass EPD in December of 2019. And then after that, last year, the NGA Advocacy Committee worked on this flat glass global warming potential, asking those, any state legislatures and anyone asking for global warming potential numbers for flat glass, that the limit be set 20% above the industry average referenced in the EPD. And this is for a reason being, it's due to the inherent uncertainty of the life cycle assessment itself and the process and inclusion of estimated variables, assumptions in the building, such as weighted average, upstream and downstream transportation, and the building service life. So NGA had set out and sent this document to the DGS, Department of General Services in California, before the date, so that way they can help establish this maximum global warming potential for flat glass. So this is a little bit more of a snapshot of what the specifics are in this document. So on January 1st of 2021, earlier this year, the Department of General Services did establish the BioClean California Act maximum acceptable GWP limits. And it listed all 4 of them, of which flat glass was listed as 1.72 metric tons, as we had seen previously. So now let's get into a little bit of meat and some of the nuances of the actual act itself and why many questions are coming up about what to do in California right now. So differences of flat glass and processed glass. So as many of you know that's on this webinar right now, flat glass is float glass, it's rolled glass, and the Department of General Services in California defines flat glass in their FAQ as float or rolled glass that is clear or tinted. Now, how many of you actually put in raw flat glass into a building? It's typically the processed glass. And so there's one of the discrepancies. So NGA had reached out to Department of General Services administration saying that, hey, this is a discrepancy. What can we do about this? And so the Department of General Services, their job is to follow the letter of the law. It is to what the bill is written and how to now implement it. And so going back and forth, we're discussing all of this. So processed glass, as you know, is flat glass that has been further processed with coated glass, tempering, laminated, insulating, painting, decorative, etc. And usually the installed glass has been processed in some way before it goes on the actual glass facade. So in working with DGS, trying to figure out how to now deal with this discrepancy, we kind of talked through what can be done. So the question that we get often, why does AB262 reference flat glass in buildings when buildings are glazed with processed glass? And again, I mentioned the actual bill itself states flat glass and not processed glass. And so here's just a little image that just kind of talks through this here. We did let them know that flat glass is not installed in a completed commercial building. Processed glass is usually utilized in construction and installed in buildings. Processed glass is not included in the AB262 language at all. However, AB 262 has already been passed into law with the language limited to flat glass itself. And then in addition to just saying flat glass, it now asks for facility-specific EPDs. And so why is a facility-specific EPD required by AB 262? Absolutely. So NGA put out an FAQ on how to work through some of this here. So a facility-specific manufacturer EPD is a product EPD in which the environmental impacts can be attributed to a single manufacturer and manufacturing facility. And however, a facility-specific EPD would be impractical, as you may know, and overly burdensome because the glass supply chain, it's a building can be built with many glass suppliers. In addition, the disclosure of facility-specific data rather than product-specific environmental impact data could result in the disclosure of business-sensitive confidential data that may be used in ways that could be competitively disadvantageous. None of the current published EPDs for flat glass manufacturers that the Department of General Services proposes to use to calculate the environmental, the industry average GWP value is facility-specific data. So that's part of another nuance that you need to understand is that an informal survey of the NGA forming committee members indicate that they will not be, sharing or be able to share facility-specific EPD data because of its proprietary nature. So as a fabricator or glazing contractor, what do you do if you're asked for flat glass facility-specific data by a customer in order to comply with AB 262 in a public works building? So in speaking with the Department of General Services and going through back and forth with all of these, knowing that the bill is already written and what's said there is what we have, and they aren't willing to change the bill. There's no sponsor for that. When you're being asked, what can you do about this? You have to explain to California Department of General Services that they define flat glass as float or rolled glass that is clear or tinted. Flat glass, as defined by AB 262, is not supplied to public works buildings. And flat glass manufacturers are several steps removed from the final product that is installed in public works buildings. As legally written, AB 262 does not apply to processed glass that is typically supplied to California public works building. So you have to do a little bit of explaining. If you are bidding a California public works project and look for what is specified, how is it written for glazing? If it states that it's flat glass, you just simply need to let them know that this here that the processed glass goes into a building and not the actual flat glass itself. And if it states processed glass, if it's saying that it has to have a coating on it, or it's an insulated piece of glass, or laminated, heat treated anyway, then you need to let them know that AB 262 states flat glass. So it's a little bit of an education on all parties involved. And I know that's confusing and it's frustrating, but we've been kind of working with the Department of General Services for a couple of years on this, and this is as far as we got. And of course, we continue working with them on what to do. The last time I spoke with the gentleman who is in charge of flat glass, he did mention that, July 1st of this year, once the global warming potential is now, they're starting to look at the actual data that they're coming in afterwards. They'll probably start to take a look and see what needs to be done, if anything needs to be done to make changes. I have some links in which I wanted to share. We have quite a few information out there. So we have a link for our NGA FAQ, which is on our website. It's glass.org, and these are live links to where it talks about, what can be done and how to make compliance. It's also important to note that if Buy Clean California Act asks for facility-specific data for flat glass, it states for flat glass use in buildings. However, the advocacy paper talks about the global warming potential, but also talks about the numbers, and it's product specific, not facility specific data that we have. There's also a link for the FAQs to the actual Department of General Services that they have put together with input from NGA and its members. And then, like I mentioned, that the forming committee has published an industry-wide flat glass, which was used to determine the industry-wide EPD. Now, moving on to reference materials, because as you can tell, there's a lot of questions and everyone has an FAQ on this. NGA's advocacy page, which is www.glass.org about-nga/advocacy, has a link that talks california AB262, and included in that on that page, it has the steps of how we got here from when first California had this legislation. Additionally, on there is our the NGA frequently asked questions for glass and buildings in compliance with California AB 262. This goes through step by step, like I did on today's webinar, that talks about what exactly does this mean, what does it entail, and how to comply with California AB 262. And the link, like I mentioned, all these links are live links. So when you get this handout, you'll be able to click on this and get this very important FAQ. In addition, the California site, the California government site, which has the Department of General Services Procurement Division, have a list of their FAQs on Buy Clean California Act, in which it does go through, what's due, not just for flat glass, of course, but for the other three named materials, the structural steel, reinforcing steel, as well as mineral wool board installation. It talks through as to what is specific, facility specific EPD versus the other ones. It talks about the different GWP numbers that is mandated by the different material, as well as just deadlines and timelines and things like that. And one of the very important things that's on this this FAQ page is a list of the awarding agencies, or the awarding authorities. Those are listed out by different departments, like I mentioned at the very beginning of this presentation. And you're able to reach out to them and ask questions specifically as well. NGA also published a general EPD education page. The flat glass, the forming committee of NGA wanted to make sure that there's some additional information. There's a lot of discussions about comparing EPDs and how, if, first of all, can you compare them? It is not encouraged to do so because it's misleading. You have to have every single thing aligned in order to compare apple to apples where it comes to EPDs. So this document goes through, just some general information on EPDs. And then lastly, in our NGA's Glass magazine, there's an article written in 2019, Product Transparency FAQs, that kind of goes a little bit deep dive into, some more LCAs, EPDs, PCRs, and then HPD, which we did not discuss today, which is the health product declarations. It goes into who's asking for these and, what they're about and everything else. That was a quick overview of all things AB 262, and I'm sure there's some questions, and that's why I had wanted to make sure that we do this webinar and in attempt to answer some of these questions.
We do have one question in the chat. Is NGA planning to develop an industry average EPD for processed glass?
For process glass. So this here, like I mentioned in the slides, the process glass PCR is coming up for an update, or it's going to be expired this year. That means that has been published 5 years ago. In the past 5 years, actually 6 years ago, before it was published, both at the time GANA and IGMA have reached out to fabricators. And in the past, I would say at least 4 years, we've given presentations asking for members and fabricators who are willing to work on a process glass industry-wide EPD. And we have not been successful. One of the questions that we have is like, there's so many fabricators and there's so many different types of products. How can we go ahead and have an industry-wide process glass? And do we need to have every single fabricator participate? There were some discussions in which if we're able to get a sampling of the industry, sample some of the larger fabricators, some of the medium-sized fabricators, and some of the smaller fabricators, those who participate in that will be able to then use that EPD. However, we have not had anyone saying that yes, they want to do these. There are several, there's a few fabricators out there, and that has their own specific, product specific process glass EPD. However, we keep asking the question. And so if there's interest within the fabricators and anyone who is producing any type of processed glass, let us know. There's the last 2 months, there has been a question in the NGA advocacy technical e-blast that has been going out asking for fabricator input. And I know that next week at the FGIA meeting, as well as in July at the NGA glass conference, and then again in September, we will be discussing this. Do fabricators want a process glass industry-wide EPD? And if so, who is interested in it? So a long answer, but no, we don't have one at the moment, and we have been asking the questions. However, we're not getting a lot of takers on this.
Okay, excellent. Well, thank you for the detailed answer. And I am going to put, Irmela, your email in the chat.
Yes.
So if additional questions come in as you ponder the presentation, please don't hesitate to contact Irmela directly. And with that, we did want to point out, in lieu of a Thirsty Thursday in July, we invite you to attend our NGA Glass Conference instead. It takes place on Tuesday, June 20th from 3 to 5 p.m. Eastern. Again, registration is complimentary, and it will be a good opportunity to learn what's being worked on behind the scenes, including things like this activity, and also how new initiatives are developed. So our next presentation for Thirsty Thursday will take place August 26th. And if there's nothing else, Irmela, thank you again for your time and sharing this information with us this afternoon.
Absolutely, and members and non-members alike have my email address, and for the most part, July 1st is coming up, and after July 1st is when we're going to see, how this is implemented in California. But I want to let everyone know what to do and, how to answer that question. So thank you all so much for joining us today.